We live in a world without surgical pain. Think about that. We have this almost magical ability to switch off human suffering. We can open a body, repair it, and close it back up, and the person at the center of it all feels nothing. This single discovery is the foundation of almost all of modern medicine. It's a gift of unimaginable value. But what if I told you this gift wasn't delivered by some noble hero of science? What if it was born from a brutal, backstabbing war between ambitious rivals? A war filled with public humiliation, accusations of theft, and a vicious battle for a patent that would ultimately destroy them all. This is the story of the men who conquered pain, and how, in doing so, they unleashed a new kind of suffering on themselves that would drive them to madness, poverty, and early graves. To really get how huge this was, you have to understand the world without it. You have to go back to the early 1800s, a time rightly called the Age of Agony. Surgery wasn't a science. It was butchery, a terrifying, last-ditch resort, a spectacle of controlled violence. There was no anesthesia. There was only speed. Operations were performed in crowded amphitheaters, with medical students and even curious spectators looking on. The patient, maybe after a stiff drink of whiskey, would be held or strapped down to a wooden table. And then the screaming would begin. The surgeon's only real skill was speed. A great surgeon could amputate a leg in under a minute. The sound of a saw on bone, the screams of the patient, this was the soundtrack of medicine. Many people chose to die from their illness rather than face the surgeon's knife. And for those who did survive the operation, many died days later from the shock and trauma of the pain itself. For thousands of years, this was just how it was. Pain was an unconquerable monster, until the 1840s, when a few men in America, all around the same time, thought they had found a way to slay it. Our story begins, oddly enough, not in a hospital, but at a party. Back in the 1840s, ether frolics and laughing gas parties were a bizarre form of public entertainment. People would inhale nitrous oxide or ether vapor just for fun, stumbling around in a euphoric daze, often hurting themselves without feeling a thing. One of the people who noticed this was a dentist from Connecticut named Horace Wells. In 1844, after watching a man at a laughing gas demonstration badly gash his leg and feel no pain, Wells had a flash of insight. He realized this gas could be used to pull teeth painlessly. He even tried it on himself, having a colleague pull one of his own molars while he was high on nitrous oxide. He felt nothing. Wells believed he had made the greatest discovery in history. He arranged a public demonstration at the most prestigious hospital in America, Massachusetts General in Boston. In front of a room full of skeptical surgeons and students, he gave the gas to a patient and began to pull a tooth, but he was nervous. He pulled the tooth too soon, before the gas had taken full effect. The patient cried out in pain. The audience erupted in laughter and jeers. "Humbug!" they shouted. Horace Wells was humiliated. He fled Boston, his career in ruins. But in that audience, there was one man who didn't laugh. A former student and partner of Wells, a man named William T.G. Morton. And Morton believed his old partner was onto something big. He just had the wrong chemical. William Morton was a man of immense ambition. He was a dentist, but he dreamed of being a great doctor. He knew that if he could solve the problem of surgical pain, his name would be immortal. He began to secretly experiment, not with nitrous oxide, but with a more powerful chemical, ether. He tested it on his dog, on goldfish, and then on himself, inhaling the fumes until he passed out. He was convinced this was the key. On October 16, 1846, Morton returned to the very same operating theater where his friend had been shamed. This time, he was the one with the new invention. He brought a strange, custom-made glass globe containing a sponge soaked in ether. The patient was a young man with a tumor on his neck. The surgeon, Dr. John Collins Warren, the most famous in America, was skeptical. He turned to the packed amphitheater and said, "As Dr. Morton has not yet arrived, I presume he is otherwise engaged." The audience chuckled. Just then, Morton rushed in. He administered the ether to the patient. A few minutes later, the man was unconscious. Dr. Warren made the first incision. The room was dead silent. The patient didn't move. He didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. Warren continued the operation, removing the tumor. Still, silence. When it was over, he turned to the stunned audience and uttered one of the most famous lines in medical history. "Gentlemen, this is no humbug." The age of agony was over. The news exploded across the world. Humanity had conquered pain, and William T.G. Morton was a hero. He was the man who had done it. Or so he thought. The moment the news broke, the war began. A third man emerged. A brilliant, but bitter and eccentric chemist named Dr. Charles Jackson. Jackson was actually Morton's old chemistry professor, and he now claimed that he was the true discoverer. He said he was the one who told Morton to use ether, that Morton, a mere dentist, had stolen his idea. Then, Horace Wells, the humiliated dentist, re-emerged, claiming that Morton had stolen the idea from him and simply swapped one gas for another. The discovery that was meant to be a gift to humanity had become a vicious, three-way battle for credit, fame, and money. Morton, desperate to profit from his discovery, tried to patent it. He even tried to disguise the ether, coloring it red and calling it Lethian, hoping to keep his secret. But the medical community was outraged. A discovery this important, they argued, should be free for everyone. The fight became a national obsession. The men wrote furious letters to newspapers. They lobbied Congress. They attacked each other's reputations. It was a public, ugly, and deeply personal war, and it destroyed them all. Horace Wells, the man with the first spark of insight, became obsessed with proving his priority. He kept experimenting with new gases, including chloroform, and became addicted in the process. In 1848, in a drug-fueled delirium, he threw acid on two women in the street. He was arrested and thrown in jail. A few days later, he took his own life. Charles Jackson, the brilliant chemist, spent the rest of his life in a bitter, paranoid campaign to claim credit not just for anesthesia, but for the invention of the telegraph as well. He eventually suffered a complete mental breakdown and spent the last 7 years of his life in an insane asylum. And William Morton, the man who stood in that operating theater and changed the world, saw none of the fame or fortune he dreamed of. He spent his entire fortune on legal battles, trying to defend his patent and his claim. He died in 1868 at the age of 48, completely broke, after reading a newspaper article that credited his rival Jackson with the discovery. The news caused him to have a massive stroke. The men who had given the world the ultimate relief from pain had found only suffering for themselves. Today, the monument that stands in the Boston Public Garden to commemorate the discovery of anesthesia bears a strange inscription. It doesn't name a single person. It simply reads, "To commemorate the discovery that the inhaling of ether causes insensibility to pain. First proved to the world at the Mass. General Hospital in this city, October AD 1846. The war was so bitter, so toxic, that history decided none of them deserved the credit. Their story is a powerful, tragic reminder that a great discovery isn't enough. Science is a human endeavor. It's filled with ego, ambition, and greed. They were flawed, obsessive, and deeply human men. But their flawed, human struggle gave us an almost divine gift. The gift of a world without surgical pain. A gift so profound, we can never truly comprehend the agony of the world they left behind. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the history of science. See you next time.